Hey everyone, it's Michael with Colorcubic, and we're back again with the fourth installment of our 3D packaging tutorial. Now, where we left off in our last video, we had just finished breaking apart our package to reveal all of the individual components that make up our package. We also nested those components appropriately so that when this package folds, it's folding the way it should. In addition to that, we also adjusted the rotation axis of those components. But in this video, what we'll be doing is we'll essentially be assigning Expresso tags to all of those individual components, and we'll be compiling all of those Expresso tags into one central location to act as a controller. So without further ado, because we've definitely got a lot to cover, let's just jump right into this. So what we want to do first is we just want to nest all of these components into a null object. Now, for those of you not familiar with Cinema 4D, a null object is pretty similar to a folder in Adobe Photoshop. And hopefully those of you watching this are familiar with Photoshop. If not, that's okay. Essentially, this folder or null object is going to act not only as a container for all of these objects, so it's great to clean up your scene, but it's also a good place to assign controls so that you can control essentially anything that you want to rig and animate. And that's precisely what we'll be doing with this package. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's select our centerpiece here, and then let's come down here to left fold, and with the Shift key held, select fold. And now let's go ahead and press the Alt Option key and the G key. And that'll group all of these together into a null object. Now, let's go ahead and double click the null object, and I'm just going to rename this to master control. There we go. And now with our master control selected, let's come down here to where it says user data. So let's select that, and we're going to add user data. Now, first, we want to delete this data point. We don't need this. So let's go ahead and just delete that. And now let's add a group. And we're going to name this group Master Control. And just tap out of that. And now click and drag Master Control so it's in the root of our Manage User Data. And now just click OK. So you can see here it's created a new tab called Master Control. And this is where we're going to compile all of our Expresso tags. So before we get started with that, let's go ahead and reveal all of the individual components of our package in our master control null object. And we just need to make sure that we do that for every single one, because the naming conventions of these individual components need to match up with the naming conventions of the Expresso tags, just so it's not confusing. So let's come back down here to our master control, and you need to make sure that master control is selected as a null object. And with master control selected, let's come up here to user data and select manage user data. And now what you want to do is select master control and then add data. And let's just drag this window over here so we can see what we're doing. So with this data point, let's come over here and rename this to left fold. And just tab down, and then in our min value point, let's change this from 0 to -100. And just tab out of that. And now let's add a new data point. So real quick, you can see we're essentially going to be creating controls for every single component of our package, with the exception of the centerpiece, because that doesn't need any controls because it's not folding. So with this new data point created, let's rename this one to left top fold. And just tab out and come down here to our minimum value point, and we're going to change this to -100. And now, with our master control selected, let's add another data point. So this is going to be a little bit tedious, and I don't really want to call out every single change. You can essentially see what's happening. So I'm just going to try to breeze through this and try to follow along as best you can. If you happen to get lost, feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comments section, and I'll be sure to reply to you as promptly as I can. So yeah, let's do this. And you just want to make sure that you are naming these value points to match with the objects for the components in our master controller null object. And you also want to make sure that you're adjusting the minimum value to -100. That's an important step because this is essentially going to define the rotation axis of those components. And by adjusting the minimum value to -100%, it's essentially telling that object that when we rotate it, it'll rotate in 360 degrees. Now, this is based on percent, and you can change it to degree or meter or real. I like to stick with percent, just because it's just easier for me, but you can change it to degree if you'd like, or any of these other value points. But not to confuse you too much, just make sure if you're going to stick with percent that you adjust the minimum value to -100%. So let's come back here to our master control, add data, and let's rename this one to top fold 1. And just tab out, -100, and let's add a new data point. Top fold 2, and -100, tab out, add a new data point. And, this definitely seems like a tedious process, and, it really is, but at the end of the day, this is going to save you a huge headache when you want to animate something. Because essentially, once we create all of these controls, we can take it a step further and compile all of those controls into one slider. So you can control how this package animates and folds together with one slider. And that's just super convenient when you need to animate something. So yeah, you have to put in the work just to prepare for it, but once you do that, if you need to adjust the animation and all, you just have one slider to deal with instead of having to animate all of the individual components of that piece that you want to animate. So hopefully those of you who are following along with us see the value in that. It's just a good time saver. All right, so let's name this one right fold. Let's tab out, -100. Let's add a new data point. And, right top fold. -100. Back fold 1. And back fold 2. And I think that's it. We're all done. So let's go ahead and click OK. And as you can see here in our master control tab, in our place within our master control null object, it's placed all of the controls that we'll be assigning to all of these individual components. So this is essentially the bulk of what we'll be controlling this package. But like I said before, we'll be compiling all of these controls into one single slider. And so that'll make this even more convenient. So let's go ahead and just work our way top to bottom. Let's start with the left fold. And with the left fold selected, right-click, and come down here to Expressions and Set Driver. And now let's come to our left fold object in our Objects panel, and come to Coordinates. And because we'll be adjusting the H rotation axis, make sure that H is selected, right-click, Expressions, and Set Driven Absolute. And you can see the value zeroed out. And that's because if you come back here to our master control null object, it's now pulling data from this controller. So if we control it here, you can see that it's adjusting the rotation axis of that fold. So hopefully you can see now how this is essentially going to apply to all of those individual components. There is one thing that I want to change with this, and this is just for me. I'm kind of OCD when it comes to all of these folds, moving in a positive value. So you can see real quick, if I increase the value in a positive %, it's rotating, but it's not rotating in the direction I want it to. It's rotating inward and not, not outward. And so that's not really what I want to happen. So we can change this by coming to the Expresso tag. So you can see this little kind of sideways T here. This is the Expresso tag. So what you want to do is you just want to double click that. And this is the Expresso Editor. And don't feel too intimidated. Just there's only a few things we need to adjust in this window. So with our range mapper selected, it'll bring up this window here, and we just want to come down to reverse and check that. And then we can X out. And as you can see, it's adjusted the rotation axis, so now it's a reverse value, but it's moving in a positive %, a positive value. And that's precisely what we want. And because it'll be folding in quarter increments, 25% is exactly what we want. So there we go, we're done with that. So now let's work our way down. So left top fold, make sure that's selected, right click, expressions, set driver. And then let's come to our left top fold object. And this time we'll be adjusting the P value of the rotation. So just make sure that P is selected, right click, expressions, set driven absolute. And now let's adjust the rotation, and it looks like we need to do the same thing for this as well. So I'm going to set the left top fold to 25%, and then I'm going to come to our left top fold Expresso tag, double click that, which will bring up the Expresso Editor, and with my range mapper selected, I'm going to check reverse, and then just X out. And there we go. That looks good. So let's come back up to our master controller null object, and let's start with left bottom fold. So let's right click, expressions, set driver. Let's come to our left bottom fold object, and again with the P value selected, right click, expressions, set driven absolute. Now let's go back to our master control, and let's set this to 25%. Now this one should rotate in the direction it's supposed to. There we go. So let's work on the top fold now. Make sure that top fold is selected, right click, expressions, set driver. We can actually just close this left fold object because we're done with this one. And with the top fold one selected, we'll be adjusting the P value with this. So make sure that the P rotation value is selected, right click, expressions, set driven absolute. Now let's come up here to master control, and let's change this to 25%. And again, this one is rotating in the wrong direction if you care about all of the value points going in a positive value. So let's adjust that by double clicking on the Expresso tag assigned to the top fold one. So just double click that. And with our range mapper selected, we'll just click reverse and we can close out. And there we go. So as you can see, it's, our package is coming together nicely. So now that that's done, let's come back up here to our master control null object. And let's work on top fold 2. Expressions, set driver. And let's select top fold 2 here. And again, we're adjusting the P value for rotation. So make sure the P is selected, expressions, and set driven absolute. Now let's go back to our master control, and let's change this to 25%. Oops. And we need to adjust that as well, so just double click the Expresso tag assigned to our top fold object. And let's drag this over, select the range mapper, and reverse. And let's close out. And there we go. So let's go back to our master control. And I'm going to try to just get through this pretty quick because we're already at 14 minutes in our video, and I don't want to take too long to do this. So just try to follow along as best you can. If you need to, you can always go back in the video. So I'm going to select my bottom fold, right click, expressions, set driver. I'm just going to close my top fold because we're done. The bottom fold selected, the p-value, right-click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute, and this should rotate in the right direction. Just going to change the value point to 25%, and there we go. And now let's work on bottom fold 2. Right-click, Expression, Set Driver, and again the p-value, right-click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. I'm working in the bottom fold 2. Go back to Master Control, change this to 25%. That looks good. Alright, so we're done with that. Now let's move on to, let's move on to our right fold. So right fold selected, Expression, Set Driver. Our right fold will be adjusting the H value this time, so make sure that the H rotation axis on our right fold object is selected. Right-click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. Now, this should rotate in the direction it's supposed to, and we don't need to adjust that. Yeah, it looks like it is. Oops. And there we go. So let's work on right top fold, right-click, Expressions, Set Driver. And we're going to work with the p-value for this, so make sure that the p rotation axis is selected. Right-click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. And this should... oh no, looks like we need to reverse that as well. So with our right top fold, with the Expresso tag assigned to the right top fold here, just double-click that. Let's drag these over. With our range mapper selected, reverse, and close out. That looks good. So let's go back to our master control, go down, and with our right bottom fold selected, right click, Expressions, Set Driver, and our right bottom fold selected here as our object, we'll be adjusting the p-value and the rotation axis, so right click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute, go back to our master control, and this should be 25%. I don't know why that changed, but and that should, yeah, it looks like that rotated in the direction it was supposed to. And let's go on to our back fold. So back fold 1 selected, right click, Expressions, Set Driver, and our back fold object selected here, we're adjusting the H value. So make sure that the H is selected, right click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. Now let's go back to our master control null object. Let's come down here, oops. It's 25, and we're going to change this to 25 as well. And there we go. That looks good. We're almost done. So with our back fold 2 selected, I'm going to right click, Expressions, Set Driver, and I'm just going to change this to 25 in here so we don't need to mess with that. And now let's go to our back fold 2 object, and with our H value selected in the rotation axis, right click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. And there we go. So this is essentially it. This is Xpresso, and that looks pretty good. But we're not done yet. We can actually take this a step further. So with our master control object selected, let's come over here to Create, Object, and Null Object. And now let's take our master control null object, which has all of our package components nested inside, and let's just drag and drop that in this new null object. Now let's double click this new null object, and I'm just going to rename this to master controller. You know what, that's a little confusing because the null object inside is called master control. So let's call this supreme controller. It's like a bizarre monarchy or something. Anyway, so with our supreme controller selected, let's come here to user data and add user data. And now we're going to delete this data point. We're going to create a new group. So just add group, and let's rename this to supreme controller. And just tab out. And now come to supreme controller here and click and drag this into the root of our manage user data. And now, with our supreme controller selected, let's go ahead and add a data point. So add data, and you can just drop down the supreme controller to reveal that data point. and we're going to rename this data point to Supreme Controller. Just tab out and make sure that the value is adjusted to -100, and just tab and OK. So you can see this one controller here, this one slider. I guess it's not technically a slider, it's just a controller. You can actually change it to a slider if you'd like, but we'll stick with the % for now. So with that selected, I'm going to right-click, Expressions, Set Driver. And now I'm going to come back to our master control null object, and I'm going to select left fold, and with the Shift key selected, I'm going to come all the way down here to backfold 2 to make sure that I'm selecting all of those components. And now I'm going to right-click, Expressions, Set Driven Absolute. Now, right away, you can see that the package just unfolded, and that's okay. But if we come back to Supreme Controller, our Supreme Controller null object, and we're going to change this to 25%. Boom. There we go. It's one controller. And so this is precisely what we want. This is what we wanted to achieve. Now, I don't want to get into this too much in this video because we're already pretty far along. So I think this is actually a pretty good place to stop. But in the next video, what we'll be doing is we'll be adjusting the parameters of all of these individual components so that when this object does fold, as you can see, there are some nasty intersections happening here. And, you know, for those of you who care about the quality of your work, this isn't really acceptable. So we can fix that, but we'll fix that in the next video. Also in the next video, we'll assign essentially a tag, a Simulant Tag, and essentially it'll be the cloth surface Simulant Tag to increase the thickness of this package, just to add a little depth to it. But otherwise, yeah, hopefully you found this video useful. And for those of you trying to follow along verbatim, you know, if you got lost, I apologize for that. I definitely wanted to get through this sort of quickly without losing anyone, but if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave your questions and comments in the comments section, and I'll be sure to follow up with you as soon as I can. Otherwise, you know, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time in the 5th installment of our 3D packaging tutorial. All right, talk to you soon.